The bitter wind cut through my coat like tiny blades, but I hardly felt it anymore. My knuckles, red and raw, slammed again against the front door, my front door, but no one came. The porch light flickered above me, casting a pale yellow glow on the snow-covered steps. I leaned forward, my breath fogging up the frosted glass, and that's when I saw him. Nathan, my son, my only child. He was standing in the living room, arms wrapped tightly around a blonde woman in a silk dress. Not his wife, Julie. This woman was younger, sharper, confident in a way that sent chills down my spine, far colder than the January night ever could. The two of them laughed, their bodies swaying together, a slow dance to music I could barely hear, but loud enough to drown my pleading. In her hand, she held a wine glass filled with ruby-red liquid. My breath caught. I recognized the bottle on the coffee table. Edward and I had saved that vintage for our 40th wedding anniversary. He passed away before we could open it. I kept it anyway, just a reminder of the life we had built. I banged harder, my voice hoarse. "Nathan, please, let me in." He didn't flinch. He looked directly at me, through me, and pulled the curtain closed with a slow, deliberate motion. The light disappeared. The cold took its place. I wasn't always an outsider in this house. Just a few months ago, Nathan had lost his job. He called, sounding desperate. Julie's voice trembled as she asked if they could move in just for a little while with the kids. Of course, I said yes. Family shows up for family. At first, it felt like a blessing. Laughter echoed through the hallways again. The twins brought life into the quiet house I'd shared with Edward for 35 years. But slowly, everything began to shift. Nathan interrupted me at dinner. Julie stopped making eye contact. The children started mimicking their father's tone when I spoke. Eye rolls, smirks, the subtle art of dismissal. And I started to disappear. Until tonight, when that invisibility became a lock on the door, frost on the window, and a cruel twist of the wine opener. I used to believe family was your last safe place. Now I knew it could also be the first to turn against you. If you've ever felt betrayed by the ones you love most, stay with me. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story with someone who needs to know they're not alone. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been made to feel like a stranger in your own life? It didn't happen all at once. The unraveling came slowly, like a thread I didn't realize I'd pulled until the whole tapestry began to fall apart. Nathan stopped talking to me with warmth. He no longer asked how my day was or thanked me for meals. At first, I brushed it off as stress. After all, losing a job and supporting a family of 4 must be overwhelming. But the real change was in the little things, things most people wouldn't even notice, like how he would interrupt me mid-sentence at dinner. "Mom, no offense," he'd say with that familiar smirk, "but nobody cares about what happened at your church volunteer group." Julie would shift uncomfortably, and the kids, God bless them, started copying his tone. Eye rolls, giggles. One night, Jack looked up and said, "Do we have to let Grandma talk every night?" My heart cracked a little that evening. Not because of what he said, but because of how quickly disrespect can be inherited. Then came the missing keys. The thermostat turned so low my fingers ached in the morning. A final straw was when I found one of my bank statements already opened, torn sloppily and tossed in the recycling bin under a pile of pizza flyers. I hadn't even opened that envelope yet. One evening, walking past the kitchen, I heard Nathan's voice from the living room. He didn't know I was within earshot. "When she's gone," he said, "everything falls into place." The words hit harder than the cold night he locked me out. I wasn't just being ignored, I was being erased. A few days later, while Nathan was in the shower, I passed by his open laptop on the dining table. I never go through his things, but something inside me, something raw and maternal and afraid, told me to look. And there it was, an email thread between him and a woman named Carla Monroe. The subject line read, "Guardianship, Final Steps." My eyes blurred as I read the contents. Plans to have me declared mentally unfit. Notes about a facility, Clearbrook Pines, just 2 towns over. A line that made my stomach twist. "Once the court signs off, we can list the house immediately. Carla's team is ready for staging." I sat down, trembling. This wasn't just cruelty. This was calculated removal. I forwarded the email to myself, deleted the sent message, and shut the laptop. My hands didn't stop shaking for hours. That night, I called the only person I trusted outside this house, Ruth, my best friend since 2nd grade. By morning, she was on my porch with a serious-looking man in a dark coat named Mr. Lewis, an elder law attorney. They listened quietly while I recounted everything. The insults, the manipulation, the email. Mr. Lewis placed a hand over mine and said, "You'll need more than suspicion and a single message. We'll need patterns, proof, documentation." "How?" I asked. "You become exactly what he says you are," Ruth said, her voice like steel. "Confused, weak, foggy, but only when it matters. Let him grow careless." I didn't sleep much that night. The idea of pretending to be broken when I already felt so close to it was unbearable. But the alternative was unthinkable. I couldn't let him take what was mine. I wouldn't be discarded like yesterday's paper. The next day, Nathan brought me tea after lunch. "You seemed a little out of it earlier, Mom," he said, placing the cup in front of me. "Just something to help you sleep better." He never brought me tea. I waited until he left the kitchen. Then I poured the tea into the fern on the windowsill. Within minutes, the tips of the leaves began to brown. That evening at dinner, I reached for the salt shaker and knocked over my water glass instead. The spill spread across the table like a silent scream. "See what I mean?" Nathan said to Julie. "Her coordination's getting worse. It's not safe for her to be alone." I looked at Julie. Her eyes met mine for just a moment. Something flickered there. Doubt? Guilt? The following morning, Nathan cornered me at the top of the stairs. His hand gripped my arm a little too tight. "You okay, Mom?" he said, loud enough for anyone downstairs to hear. "You're looking unsteady. Be careful not to." He shifted behind me. I felt his hand move to my lower back. I knew what was about to happen. "Julie!" I called out, louder than I meant. "Can you help me bring down the laundry basket?" "Coming," she answered. Nathan's hand dropped. He stepped back. "You got lucky," he whispered, then turned and walked away. That night, I locked my bedroom door and cried into the same pillow I had bought with Edward on a weekend trip to Asheville. The thread count didn't comfort me anymore. Later, as I washed the dishes, Julie stood beside me. The kids had gone to bed. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I think he wants to hurt you," she said. I turned to her slowly. "But I don't know what to do," she added, eyes wet, voice shaking. I looked at her, my daughter-in-law, who once brought me flowers on Mother's Day, and I saw not a conspirator, but a woman trapped, just like me. The next morning, when Nathan left for his networking breakfast, I stood in front of the old desk Edward used to keep in the den. For years, I dusted around it, careful not to disturb the things he left inside: fountain pens, postcards, little notes he scribbled but never mailed. But today, I wasn't looking for memories. I reached beneath the bottom drawer and pried loose the hollow wooden leg I remembered Edward showing me once. A secret spot he said was just in case. Inside was a small silver key, cold, sharp, and now, my last lifeline. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door to Nathan's basement office, a place he never allowed me to enter. The air was stale and still, and the blinds had been drawn so tightly it felt like night down there. On his desk were neatly stacked manila folders. The first one read, M. Sullivan, Medical. Inside were forged documents, notes supposedly from doctors claiming I showed early signs of dementia. I'd never seen any of those physicians in my life. The next folder had a property appraisal for my home, highlighted with aggressive notes in the margins. List immediately after guardianship is finalized. Another folder contained intake forms from Clearbrook Pines, the nursing home I hadn't agreed to visit, let alone enter. But it was the last folder that chilled me to the core. Bank statements, transfers, $84,000 wired over 6 months to Carla Monroe. The account name was under her real estate LLC, but there was no mistaking the signature on the checks: Nathan's. I photographed everything with my phone, double-checked my tracks, then locked the office behind me and returned the key to its hiding place like a ghost retreating into the walls. That afternoon, I visited Carla at her real estate office, just 5 miles from town. She greeted me with a perfumed smile that barely masked her surprise. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said, motioning toward a chair. "How can I help you?" I didn't sit. I slid a plain envelope across the desk. "I believe you'll recognize the contents," I said, my voice calm but heavy. She opened it. Her smile cracked. "I know about the bank transfers," I continued. "The forged documents, the nursing home, all of it." Carla blinked. "I don't know what you think." "You have 24 hours, I cut in. Return the money, or I go to the authorities, the licensing board, and the press. Every single outlet that still values justice." Her eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." I stared back. Then call it. That evening, Julie came to my room, pale and visibly shaken. She held a manila folder to her chest. "I found this in Nathan's briefcase," she whispered, voice breaking. "It's everything. He's planning to have you evaluated tonight. Some doctor named Whitman. I'm sorry, I should have seen this sooner." Before I could respond, we heard the door slam downstairs. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Nathan's voice echoed through the hall. He walked in, perfectly composed, a phone already in his hand. "Mom," he said flatly, "Dr. Whitman will be here within the hour for an emergency psychiatric evaluation. You've become a danger to yourself and, frankly, to the rest of us." Julie stepped between us. "Nathan, don't do this." He ignored her. "You'll be moved to Clearbrook Pines tonight. We've packed your things. Judge Reynolds already signed the expedited guardianship. You don't have a choice." As he paced the room, explaining my future like a business plan, the front door creaked open. It was Emma and Jack, home early from school. Emma paused, looking at our faces, sensing the tension. Without a word, she slipped into the hallway with her phone. Nathan didn't notice. He kept talking, listing off medications, explaining how these things happen with age, and how Mom's always been fragile. 10 minutes later, we heard the knock. 2 uniformed officers stood at the door. Emma peeked behind them, her eyes wide but steady. "We received a report of a possible elder endangerment situation," the female officer said. Nathan laughed. "This is a family matter. My mother's experiencing delusions. We've already called a doctor." "Doctor?" Whitman stepped forward from behind him, clutching a medical bag. "She's not well," he said without looking at me. "Emergency placement is necessary." The officer crossed her arms. "May I see your hospital privileges and the court order authorizing this evaluation?" A beat of silence passed, then another. Dr. Whitman fumbled. "Well, it's an informal consult." "Not good enough," the male officer said. "Step outside, sir." Nathan's face turned red. "You can't do this. She's manipulating all of you." He lunged toward me. "This house should have been mine." The officer grabbed his arm. "Sir, you need to calm down." Carla tried to slip toward the door, heels clicking, but Ruth, dear, sharp Ruth, extended her cane like a drawbridge slamming shut. "Oops," she said, sweet as pie. "Senior moment." Carla stumbled backward into the officer's waiting arms. Nathan shouted as they handcuffed him, "This isn't over! You don't know who you're messing with!" But I did. I had raised him. The officers took Nathan away in cuffs that night, but justice, like healing, doesn't arrive all at once. Charges were filed. Carla and Dr. Whitman lost their licenses. But Nathan? He made bail within a week. His lawyer, paid for by some unknown benefactor, began working overtime to spin the situation as a tragic family misunderstanding. Then the veiled threats began. Unmarked envelopes, a black car parked across the street, strange calls that hung up as soon as I answered. Ruth, ever the realist, said, "They're trying to scare you into silence." But I'd already spent too long being quiet. One afternoon, while going through Edward's old things in the attic, I found a metal box tucked behind the insulation. Inside were papers, documents, photos, even a flash drive. As I opened it, the truth hit like cold water. Edward had once worked with the Harrington Group, a shell real estate syndicate laundering money through elderly-owned properties. He had tried to pull away. Maybe that's why he died so suddenly. Nathan hadn't just wanted my house, he wanted to inherit the criminal connections his father had once left behind. I brought everything to the FBI. Working with Agent Ramirez, we set up a sting operation. I invited Nathan and Carla to the house under the guise of finalizing the sale. They came, greedy and confident, and I recorded every word as they laid out their network. The FBI stormed in mid-negotiation. Over 30 arrests were made in 3 states. Nathan, now stripped of everything he once thought made him powerful, was sentenced to 15 years. As the judge gave his ruling, Nathan turned to me with eyes burning and whispered, "You were always too weak, Mother." But I wasn't. I had simply been quiet, and I'd finally remembered how to speak. 1 year later, my house is painted a warm sunflower yellow. Julie and the twins live with me. I founded Safe Seniors Against Financial Exploitation. We've already helped over 24 elders fight back and reclaim their lives. Last week, I received a letter from Nathan. One line, "I'm sorry I wasn't the son you deserved." I folded it, smiled faintly, moved on. At 59, I lost everything I thought defined me. But in that loss, I found something stronger, my voice, my purpose, my second life. If you're standing at the edge of despair, I want you to know there is a path forward. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to Real Her Stories. And tell us below, what would you have done if you were in my shoes?